All right. Hey everyone, my name is Trevor Daly with MagMod. I am here for another How I Shot It. I think we took a few weeks off and I'm excited to be back. And we have Jason Vinson. Jason, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, awesome to be here. It's been a long time since I've been on one of these.
I think you did one a couple years ago with me, isn't that right?
It's been a long time for sure.
Nice. Well, Jason, I'm always absolutely amazed by your work. You're such a like creative genius. I don't know where you get your ideas from, but I love seeing your work, and I can't wait to share it with everyone. We actually have quite a few images we're going to go through, and what's cool is you actually included some really cool behind the scenes videos, so people can see not only your process and kind of how you come up with things, but also even a little bit of editing as well. So
Yeah.
this is going to be a really cool episode. I'm excited for everyone to check it out. Jason, before we get into the episode, though, can you tell everyone where to find you?
Yeah, so on Instagram I am VincentImages_Jason.
Oh,
And
great.
then the website's just vincentimages.com. And those are kind of the two main places. That and obviously like in the MagMod group every once in a while as I make time for it. But yeah, those are the kind of the main places that you can find me.
The one thing I want to point out, well, first off, you got 90,000 followers, dude, which is pretty rad. But I want to point out as well that you you do a ton of like reels and things, and you really show kind of behind the scenes of what you're doing. I think that's why you have so many followers is the fact that you literally are out there helping other photographers kind of see exactly what you're doing. So, guys, if you are not yet following Vincent Images underscore Jason, definitely go check him out. Go follow his work. It's absolutely amazing. I love your website too. I love how that pop with that red. It looks incredible. So,
Thank you.
and
Yeah,
then
but yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, with Instagram, I feel like the majority of my followers these days are definitely all photographers. So I try and make pretty much all my posts have some sort of photography related insight or how to or breakdown or something like that.
Yeah,
And then I actually find that a lot of my couples enjoy it as well because they kind of get a behind the scenes look at like what they can expect, or they get to see some insight into like how their image was made and stuff like that as well.
that's rad. Very, very cool, Jason. I also the fact that you are serving so many other photographers. I know that you have a workshop coming up, and I said, hey, can we just talk about that? Would you mind telling everyone? I brought up the page here. I love this first shot. It's definitely eye catching.
It's kind of in your
Tell
face, right?
it's in your face. I think it looks like it's just vincentimages.com/workshops. Guys, go check it out. But Jason, can you give everyone
Yeah.
just kind of a brief overview of what this is going to be about?
Yeah, so it's going to be 2 full days in St. Petersburg, Florida. It's January 24th and 25th with a optional kind of meet and greet hangout the 23rd
Mm-hmm.
before. And it's just going to be basically all things wedding. So we're going to talk about, from wedding prep all the way through the reception, how I tackle the day, as well as things like album sales, SEO. We're going to do a lot of live shooting. So it's going to be a lot of like hands-on of how I see light, how I make light on a wedding day. And yeah, so it should be pretty fun.
That's awesome. I've
And it's
seen you
actually at a
teach.
brewery, so that's
Wait,
even
what?
more
Say that
fun.
again.
It's at a brewery, so that should be even more fun.
It's at a brewery. I love it. Jason, I've seen you teach at WPPI, and what always amazes me is this part right here, where you say the natural light as well as kind of using natural light, modifying it, and using modifiers and so forth. I think that's really what sets you apart. I think you're out of all the photographers I know, I think you're best at looking at natural light, finding it, and then saying, okay, how can we enhance this a little bit? Can I take to, I think back to the WPPI where you did the pictures with that girl in the dress and the elephant statue, and you're
Yeah.
shooting her with a hard light and stuff like that. And then I don't know, it's just amazing. I love how you do that and you work with it and you inspire me in that way. So really, really cool.
Thank
I hope you guys go check it out. Again, vincentimages.com/workshops. Go check out his page there. So
Yeah, thank you.
with that, let's jump right in. You cool with that?
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. All right. So we got this first image. Tell us about this one, how you shot it.
Yeah, so this is actually one that I wanted to talk about because whenever I post it, guaranteed like 50% of the people that comment on it think that it's photoshopped, or like I just like cut the bride out and put her in some clouds and did some sort of like Photoshop magic. And this is actually for the majority how it was in camera. And so if you real quick, if you'll play the BTS video.
Yeah.
What this is she's actually just standing in a doorway. And what I did is I took this trash can that I stole from the bathroom at this wedding venue, and I filled it up with water and just poured it on the concrete. And I was taking images, and I realized that the reflection was actually very clean. And so the image that you're looking at for the original image is actually a picture of the reflection. And so at the very bottom of the image, you can kind of see this like ripple wave where it's kind of orange. So that's the concrete. And what's happening is I have my, it's a Godox 8200 with a MagMod sphere and a full CTO gel behind the bride, and it's basically just filling the room behind her with white. She's like in a white hallway. And so that light is bouncing all around and then also bouncing off the wall to fill in her face. And then it's coming out onto the concrete and then filling in that concrete. And so that's why it's kind of warm there. And then the clouds that you're seeing is actually the concrete from through the puddle, like through the reflection. And it's blue because of the natural light being blue, causing the concrete to be blue. And then in post, if you want to go through it, I have a quick little like speed edit of what I did in post. Basically, all I did is kind of just dramatize the colors a little bit. So that's what the natural light scene looked like. So I basically just squared up that doorway because I was shooting at such a harsh angle, and then I just dramatized those colors a little bit, got rid of some of the wall, and then I just unstretched the bottom of it to kind of fill the frame back in.
That's so
And
crazy,
then
dude.
there's a little she had like a black her dress had this like really dramatic black ribbon on the back of it, but it just was a little distracting, so I just took the ribbon out.
That's such an insane.
But yeah.
Hold on, I want to play this speed edit one more time. Let me go
Okay,
back.
yeah.
So okay, so you, oh
So I
man,
was just squaring up that door
yeah,
and then getting the exposure on her right, and then I just make sure that the color for that concrete is just a little bit more blue, and then the bottom I made it just a little bit more orange, and then just fix the stretch that essentially added by squaring up the door.
that's so crazy. I love that, dude.
Yeah, and so real quick, if you go to that, you could show the natural light scene. And so this is just what the image looks like, this natural light wise. And so if you see where the reflection starts, you can kind of see that ripple, and that's where the
Hmm.
bottom of the frame is. And then in post, I just flipped it upside down.
You know what's interesting? We got a few hearts popping up. I love it. Bud Johnson, he just said, "Ha, that speed edit is wild." Jason, you're a wizard. Totally agree. I love Bud. Bud, it's been too long, man.
That's
It was
great.
cool
Yeah.
to see his face pop up. Ellie was in here. Sandra was in here as well. I saw Natalie was on. So appreciate you guys watching. Um, you know what's interesting about this is when you see it here, you think, oh, but there's not a door that's going to be that small. But then when you actually look at the natural light picture, you notice that it's just that glass cutout essentially. And
Yeah.
so it's really interesting how you thought to use that, and then use the reflection and everything. I mean, it's insane, dude. I don't know how you think about these things, but
um, yeah, I don't remember. I was basically just like looking around for something out that was like outside in this little like covered area. And what it is there's actually it actually had just rained, and so there is a puddle that's like off to the side that I was trying to use, and I was playing with that, and I was like, man, I wish that puddle was like squared up to the door. And so
Mm,
that's what I was like, oh, I'll just see if I can go inside and like find something. So I literally just stole that trash can out of the bathroom and filled it up with a sink, and then brought it out.
that's amazing, dude. Love it, love it, love it. Let's jump onto this photo too, because this seems like one of those pictures where anyone could pull this off based off of like seeing it like a wall. I mean, that's essentially what you're shooting at. The other one, you have a warehouse and you bucket, but it's like you got a wall here, and yet the photo looks so amazing and the way you created it. So tell us about this one, and then I can't wait to show everyone the behind the scenes on this as well.
Yeah, so basically when I'm shooting, I constantly am looking for just clean spaces. So like, a clean door, a clean wall, just something clean to frame my subject against.
Mhm.
And then a lot of the times those clean spots are also perfect for creating this like homemade silhouette thing. And so this is a perfect example of a situation where I like to use the MagMod gel, the MagMod grid, and the MagMod sphere all at the same time. So what the gel does is color the light. The sphere helps give you that like soft edge of the light.
Mhm.
And then the grid helps narrow the spread of light. And so a lot of the times when I'm doing this like backlight silhouette thing, I'll usually start with the grid off and just see what the spread looks like. And if it's too wide, that's when I'll throw a grid on to just kind of narrow that beam. And so that's what's happening here is the spread of light was just a little too wide. And so I added the grid on there to kind of just narrow that beam a little bit more so that the light had a little bit more of a spotlight. But the reason why the transition from light into shadow is so smooth is because of the sphere. And yeah, and so this is basically, I think this is like a storage unit or something like that that's outside of this restaurant. And so if you play the BTS, you can see me kind of trying to get everything squared up and in line. And what I end up doing is having to like crawl underneath this picnic table. But we're basically just where people eat their food at this restaurant. And there's like a parking lot all around us. And I'm just shooting really low to get rid of all of everything but this clean wall, and then trying to just get the sky to go where you could just see all these storm clouds and stuff.
It's interesting too because the light is so close behind them. I mean, you're literally right next to them, but you have to keep them close in order to get them, up against that wall to be able to really show that. I'm curious as far as the sky here, though. This is your blue sky, and you're able to get it that blue because you're using a CTO gel. Is that right?
Yeah, so this is full CTO gel, and then I bring it down, make it a little bit cooler in post because I just shoot auto white balance, so I don't mess with setting my white balance in post or in camera. I just wait till I get in post. But as I cool it off, as I cool the CTO gel off a little bit, the ambient goes to blue. And then in some situations, I'll just try and dramatize that a little bit more. I can't remember if I use like, sometimes I'll use like a brush or a gradient just to drop my white balance blue a little bit more, just like within the sky and stuff. I can't remember if I did that for this photo, but most likely it just kind of came out in the edit when
Do
I
you
when
have a
I like
favorite?
fine tune that white
Do you,
balance.
do you do most of your edits in Lightroom, Jason?
Right now I use Capture One.
Oh, Capture One, nice. So, is there a favorite way that you like to bring
Yeah.
that color
Uh,
in? Do you use like a vibrance or saturation, or what do you typically do?
Normally it's just a layer, or in Lightroom I would just use like an adjustment brush, and it's literally just like a white balance adjustment.
Nice. That's
So like if
interesting
the
that you
blue's
use.
there, I'll just do a white balance adjustment and just do a little bit more blue.
So, tell everyone why you use Capture One versus Lightroom, for example. What are some of the advantages or things that you see out of it that? Because I bet a lot of the
For
people listening probably use Lightroom, so I'm curious.
Yeah. For I think Lightroom is definitely the big hitter, especially with wedding photographers, because a long time ago, Capture One wasn't very good as far as bulk edits. It was mostly used for like portraits and tethering and stuff
Hmm.
like that. And now, in the last few updates, they've made some significant changes where I think it's significantly faster to cull within Capture One. It's actually just a all around faster program. They have this thing called quick edits. So if you think about when you edit on a loop deck or something like that, where you have like wheels and dials and stuff where you can control white balance and exposure and stuff like that, it's similar to that, but it's using hotkeys on your computer. And so
Hmm.
I can just hit, if I like hold the letter Q and drag my mouse up and down, it adjusts my exposure. And if I do one, it does white balance. If I do two, it does tint. And so I can like very quickly edit an image without actually having to like move my mouse and like find a slider and fine tune it and stuff like that.
Nice.
And then now in version 23, they just introduced a new, it's almost like an AI editing type thing, where what they do is you can actually you can edit a photo, and it has to have, right now it has to have like a face.
Hmm.
You can set your white balance and your exposure for that face, and then set it as a reference point, and then
Okay.
have that copied throughout the entire gallery, and it'll use that face, and it'll fine tune the exposure and white balance no matter what the different lighting scenarios are on a wedding day, and it's actually pretty dang accurate.
That's cool. That's really cool. I kind of got a giggle when you said
Yep.
version 23. I just love how it's just like, I don't know, when our kids are going to be shooting and editing, it's going to be like version 54, So
Yeah,
it's
it's
kind
gonna
of fun.
be capture two.
Yeah. So, hey, Jason, I'm not sure. It looks like from my side, I keep seeing it stall. So we might just turn this into a podcast and talk about the images, but get rid of our faces entirely.
Get rid
But
of our faces altogether. Yeah,
yeah,
at least my voice is coming through.
yeah, it's coming through great. It's coming
That's
through
the important part. No one wants to look at my ugly mug anyways.
great. I should probably get rid of mine as well. It's funny when you said that, suddenly hearts came up. I don't know if people. So, hey, by the
I'm gonna
way,
say it's just a delay for the Capture One stuff. It's not about
that's probably what it was.
the
Real quick, there are a couple comments. Natalie Sailhoff, she was mentioning that she loved the edit on that first shot and how you know showed kind of behind the scenes on that. Great vision, she said. And we got Jeremy
Awesome, thank
Ellsworth
you.
as well. I hope he's still watching. I love Jeremy. He says so
Yeah,
freaking talented. Talking
thank
about
you.
you. So
Jeremy's got an awesome backdrop company right now. Like does painted backdrops and stuff like that. They're really cool. Have you seen them?
really, I have
Yeah,
not seen those. I'll have to check that out. Do you
yeah.
know? Do
I'll
you know
check
what
it.
the name of it is?
It's like I think it's just Jeremy Ellsworth backdrops.
Jeremy Ellsworth. I'll have to check that out. That's really cool.
Yeah,
He's a talented artist. So
yeah,
that's
for sure.
awesome. Good to hear. Let's jump into this next image. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, so this is it's a big giant structure at a local museum called Crystal Bridges. And the sun had already gone down and I was the structure's all white and so I was like this would be a perfect type of scenario where I could like bounce my light off of this white to create kind of like some nice soft light. And I was using that to create some portraits of just the couple that had just like a nice clean soft light, even though it was already dark and I didn't have a softbox on me or anything like that. And then through that, I realized, you know, how that light was bouncing on this structure. And so I literally sprinted to my truck to get a second light because I'm normally just carrying like one light around. And so what I have here is I have it's a Flashpoint 1200 Pro pack-in headlight, so really powerful light at full power, and it's actually pointing away from me, away from the couple, into this white structure. And I have a MagMod CTB gel on it to make
Mm-hmm.
the balanced light be blue, and so that's why this whole structure is like a very a very blue, but it doesn't have any like harsh shadows or directionality from it. It's because it's actually bounced light. And then behind the couple, I have an 8200 with a MagMod CTO gel on it. And so if you there's a quick behind the scenes video. So there's the pack and head. It's bouncing off of that, and then filling in this whole structure with that blue light.
Uh huh.
And then the 8200 is behind the couple, and that's what's lighting them. And I have them in this pose. I call it just bounced rim light for lack of a better term, but basically what it is it's a backlight, and it's rim lighting him, and then I have them posed in a way to where the light bounces off of his face and then fills in her face. And so she's got this like nice, warm, clean, soft light on her face because the light's actually bouncing off of his face. And so now it's like an actually soft light because his face is big compared to her face, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So do you? And I've done this with couples as well. How do you normally position a couple when you want to create that? You know, because typically I'll tell them, I'll say, okay, look towards each other, but then I'll have the guy move a little bit closer towards me so that there's some room for that to bounce off. Is there anything in particular you typically say?
Yeah, so I do the same thing. So I have them look directly at each other, and
Hmm.
then I have him take just the slightest step toward me, and I
Yeah.
tell her I need to make sure that you can see his ear. So then that lets me know that she can see the entirety of his face. And then I tell him to just kind of look towards her shoulder, and then she looks down towards his chest. And so
Got
their eyes are still like crossing each other's paths, but because they're off center, they don't have to like actually look each other in the eye.
That makes sense.
But yeah, but the key is to make sure that she can see his ear, and then that way I know that she's getting the full bounce light from that backlight coming off of his face.
So now, were you saying, but it was just two lights for this one? The 1200 was basically with the gel was lighting up the entire structure on the inside, and then the light
Yep,
behind them. It's just those two lights.
yep, that's it.
That's so cool. I feel like on this shot, we're really missing an opportunity to let's see if we can do something here. We can kind of do one of these, but
Yes.
I mean, I feel like it's just one of those, you know, where you just kind of have to kind of talk about. Anyhow, that's really cool, man. Super cool
That's
stuff.
awesome.
So now these shots, Jason. Again, I apologize that your video does seem like it's not coming through all the time, but either way, we like I said, the audio is working great. But on these shots, I think this is one of those things where a ton of people would love to do this kind of stuff. This you know, including the I don't know the stars, the astronomy, and things like that. But it seems
Mhm.
like it's so hard to do when you're in an environment where there's light. You know, whether it be like in the city or anything else. So are you pulling this kind of stuff off in places where there's a venue close by? Are these like special sessions where you're taking a couple out where there's no light pollution? I'm kind of
Yeah, so
curious.
this is actually at the venue. So basically, this is in someone's backyard, and so they basically just have a big giant tent down by this river in their backyard, and so we're far enough away from a city that you can see the stars, but like the like orange like glow that you see on the horizon line, that's actually light bleed from the nearby city.
From the city. Wow. So okay, so
Yeah.
then how well here, I'm gonna let you explain how you shot it, and then I think I have a question that
Okay.
is on my mind and I'm guessing it's on a lot of people's mind as well.
Okay, yeah, so this was a fun one. So they have one single bottle of champagne left from their entire reception um, to do this image, and so I was like, okay, we'll save that. We're gonna do it, and because they decided they wanted a champagne spraying image, but they only saved one bottle, and so I knew I only had like one take at this.
Hmm.
And so I got this idea. I was like, oh, well, it'd be cool if I could get low enough to where the spraying champagne, if I could get like all the little bubbles and spray to mix in with the stars. So it looks like they're like spraying stars kind of.
Dude, only you would
And
think
so
that way.
so I wandered around this like hillside for probably a solid 10 minutes trying to find like a good clean hill where I could not have a ton of distractions on the like on the horizon's edge and stuff like that. And when
Hmm.
I show you the next image, the test shot, you'll see there's a tree that I actually ended up photoshopping out of this image.
So the test
But so
shot
I
is a
finally found this. Yeah, and so this is just like an unedited raw file just to kind of show the test shot. So this is my wife standing in just so I could test my light. The key here is that this image, this test shot, is a 10-second exposure so that I could get to get the stars. And so once I got that, and I was like, looked at the back of the camera, I was like, okay, you're sharp. The stars are coming in. We're good. Go get the couple. And then as she leaves to go get the couple, I start thinking, I was like, okay, 10-second exposure isn't really going to be ideal. Like the flash will freeze them, and so they'll get frozen, but there's still going to be a little bit of ghosting if they're moving around a bunch within that 10 seconds. And then we only have one bottle of champagne. And so to make sure I get the clean expression and spray in literally just one image, I didn't want to really chance that. And so what I ended up doing is um I lowered my shutter speed from 10 seconds to 1 second. So this is a 1 second exposure. And then in order to compensate to get the stars, I had to raise my ISO. The problem is that my 8200 was already like 15 feet away from the couple. It already had a grid on it and it was already at its lowest power. So once I raised my ISO, that flash was now significantly too powerful.
yeah,
And I didn't have like an ND filter or anything to cut the light. And so what I did is I realized that color temperature blue and color temperature orange essentially will neutralize each other, right? There's probably a
yeah.
little bit of back and forth. But what I did is I took a CTB gel and a CTO gel and I just stacked them on top of each other, essentially making my own
ND filter.
ND filter to put
Love
on
it.
here. And it was enough to cut the light that I actually had to raise the power of my flash like a stop to get back into that zone of where I was at. And so I'm like last minute trying to do this while the couple's like walking towards me. Thankfully, it was like a 5-minute walk from the tent to this part of the hill by the time they got there. By the time my wife got there and back, I had everything already set up and got like maybe 5 images
Dude.
from the spray, and this was the final image.
That what a way to think though, man. You're like, I need some kind of, filter, ND filter put on these. And granted, we have the there's the ND gels, but I
Yeah,
love that.
I
I
just
love
don't
that
have one in my
idea.
bag.
Yeah, well, I love that idea of just putting the CTB and the CTO on top of each other because that's essentially what you're doing. You're just like you said, you're canceling it out, essentially creating just a neutral light.
Yep.
I just want to live inside your brain for a second, Jason. It's crazy. Um, but tell me, so the question I was going to ask, well, first off, amazing job, kind of mixing the spray with the stars. I think that's genius. I would have never thought of something like that. The thing that kind of comes to my mind is typically when you shoot these types of things, you have to tell the couple to be really still and don't move and everything else. But here you're actually creating this kind of reactionary, this fun moment with these stars.
Yeah.
I assume I'm just guessing here that you did like a rear sync. Is that what you did on your on your flash shutter or whatever? Or
No, because at this point, I almost never use rear sync, because at this point they're not like moving through the frame. They're just kind of just a little. They're just kind of shaking within the frame, so it doesn't really
uh,
matter where the sync is. Like if they were running through the frame and you wanted to make sure that any sort of blur was behind them, then at that point you
got
would
it.
use rear sync. Um, but here it didn't really matter if the flash was at the beginning or at the end because they're just kind of like just slightly moving and you wouldn't be able to tell where
It
that
would
sync, it
just
wouldn't
capture
really
right on
affect
top
it.
of it. Yeah.
The only time you would really be able to affect it is if you zoomed in really closely to the champagne spray and you were able to see just like a little bit of ghosting. You would see that it's in front, but it's so far away that you can't really tell that.
I was kind of curious. I don't want to zoom this in here. In fact, I don't even know if there's a good way of doing it without kind of going outside the screen. But if you were to zoom in on this, do you see a little bit of ghosting on their bodies, or is it pretty?
There is just a slight bit of ghosting on them, but not on this image. I photoshopped it out.
Yeah. Oh, okay, okay, nice. So I'm
So there's just
amazed
like a
again.
little, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, there's just like a little in the original. There's just like a little slight. It almost looks like a shadow that's just around them. That's just kind of a little bit of ghosting from them moving. So it's super easy to just kind of Photoshop out with the background.
So to create something like this at a 1 second shutter speed, because typically you're doing, 10, 12, 15 seconds or whatever. So
Hmm.
at 1 second, you're shooting at a low aperture. I'm guessing like what, 1.4?
Yeah, this is 1.4, I believe, 24 millimeter.
And then what was your ISO? How far did you have to push it?
I'd have to look. I want to say probably 3200.
Really? That's it. I would have thought you would have
Yeah.
had to push it much more than that. That's crazy. Do you find that when you push your ISO high like that, do you tend to try to overexpose it a little bit as opposed to making, in other words, you'd rather overexpose it than underexpose it?
Um,
Or are you
it
just
depends
like,
on the
no, I just want to nail
situation.
it?
Uh, I almost always underexpose because I don't wanna
Really?
clip my highlights. When
Okay.
when you start getting into higher ISOs, then you wanna kinda get a little bit closer because you just start losing dynamic range.
Yeah.
So the higher an ISO I go, I try and get like right on the money. And then depending on what highlights there are, it is beneficial to kind of overexpose just a little bit so that whenever you dial it back down, it kind of just eliminates a little bit of that noise. But in those situations, it really just depends on what the highlights are doing.
Yeah.
Because I just always want to make sure that if I did overexpose a little bit, that I'm not blowing a highlight.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. No, for me, I find that whenever I try to push that ISO 3200 and beyond, I don't want to have to pull up my exposure later on in post. Although nowadays it seems like there's the
Hmm.
software out there to denoise and get rid of that noise from your photos is so good that it's like even if you have to push it. Granted, 3200 we shouldn't be having noise in our cameras anyways, but anything
Yeah,
beyond that.
nowadays, like even 3200, I can push a stop or two easily without
Yeah.
any issue.
Do you remember though, 10 years ago? It was like 3200,
I
no
do.
way.
There, yeah, you would never. It was essentially like shooting 128,000 these
Yeah,
days, and even
exactly.
then, 128,000 is probably still better
Probably,
these
probably
days.
so. I know it's crazy. All right, well, tell us about this one, man.
Okay, so this is a technique. I don't think this is the best image that I've used the technique, but it's one that I had like an associating image to kind of show the technique. But this is a technique that I call basically stacked lighting. And so I'm using the same pose that I did on the one that had the big like blue wall. And so it's
Hmm.
bounced rim light. So there's a flash that's maybe a foot away from them or a foot or 2 feet away from them, like just right behind them.
Okay.
That light is rim lighting him, and then it's bouncing off of his face, filling in her face with this nice, clean, soft light. And then the key here, this is at a like a glass factory in St. Louis. I'm shooting a wedding with a buddy of mine, Ray Prop, in St. Louis. There's this glass factory there, and I really wanted all of these like little bulbs of glass to like glow, and so I put a flash outside the venue um, to basically make all of those light up. The problem is that the light outside the venue wouldn't be bright enough to give me this lighting on the couple. And so what I do is I have a light to light up all the bulbs and then a light to light the couple, even though they're in the same line. And so it looks like
Uh,
a single light source doing all the work.
I think
So if
we
you show the
have,
next image,
yeah.
yeah, so this is just the light on the inside. just rim lighting him and then lighting up her face. And then the second light outside is lighting up all of the bulbs and stuff like that. And so the inside light is just a bare flash. It might actually have a grid on it. And
Hmm.
then the outside is just a bare flash with a full MagMod CTO gel on it. And that's how
That's
you kind of
great.
get that like sunlight look that's coming in through the window.
I love that. Ellie, she
Yeah.
says genius. I think that's the right word. I even love this shot because I think it shows people, this is that bounce rim light that you're talking about.
Hmm.
And then what I love about this too is oftentimes when we're setting up shots as photographers, it's important to kind of get the first shot, like, and I think one of the beginner mistakes that a lot of people make is they try to set up 3 or 4 lights. They see this Jason Vinson genius shot and they're like, okay, I'm going to set this up. And they try to use 3 or 4, flashes and set things up. And then it becomes confusing. And it's kind of like, hey, take it step by step, set up that first shot, get the light just right, get your bounce rim light, and then say, okay, what else can I do? How else can I make it better?
Hmm.
And that's kind of how I see. Now I don't know if that was the case here, if you had them both set up originally and then one just didn't fire, but either way, I think I can see the step, taking it
Yeah.
one step
What it
further.
is a lot of the times for shots like this is I will purposely hold down my shutter so that one
Yeah.
of the flashes can't keep up with the recycle time. So
Yep.
the backlight that's outside is at full power, and the light that's on the inside is at like a really low power because it's so close to them.
Yep.
And so by just holding down the shutter a little longer, that backlight can't keep up. And so then I get a shot with a single frame without having to like go into my trigger and like turn off a group and do all
Yep.
kinds of funky stuff. I
Yep. I
also
did
like
it.
to do this when I'm doing a single light because I'll get a flash lit image and then a natural light image. And a lot of the times when I'm doing a flash lit image, I'm at ISO 100. And so I have plenty of dynamic range that even though the image is maybe 2 or 3 stops underexposed for the natural light version, I can still up the exposure and get a natural light version out of it and a flash image out of it without having to like, again, dive into the trigger, turn off groups, adjust my exposure and do all that funky stuff.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's such a great point. I'll do the same thing when I want to get silhouettes. I'll like just fire really, really fast, and inevitably you're going to get a few that don't have that flash firing. So,
Mhm,
uh,
yep.
super smart. By the way, I love that you mentioned Ray. Ray's awesome. Ray Prop out there in
Yes.
St. Louis. Have you ever gone to his family's Thai food place before? I think it's called the King and
Uh,
I or something like that.
I don't know. Maybe.
Dude,
I've definitely been to Thai food with him, but I can't remember where we went.
he's got to take you to his family's place. It's amazing food.
I
So
know.
good stuff. All right, so we have just a few more images, and I think most of these last images they all kind of follow the same pattern. So tell us, or actually, I guess we have a few that show this image, and then there's one that kind of shows how you do it. Now, um, is this actual rain that you're shooting in right here?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so
So
this is really raining on it literally rained, the couple's entire wedding day, and this is actually the wedding couple's I think it's the bride's daughter and her, husband for this image here,
the bride's daughter and her.
and,
Okay, got it.
yeah, and so basically what's happening here is I have, 2 lights, so again, this is kind of that stacked lighting that we just talked about. But in this situation, what I have is one light lighting the couple and then another light lighting the rain. But one of the lights is a constant light, and I'm using a longer exposure. And so what's happening is the longer exposure is letting the rain streak through the frame
Jeez,
with the constant light, and then I have a pop of flash to freeze them and freeze the rain. And so if I don't know if you can zoom in a little bit, but if you see this really big on the screen, you can actually see like the movement of the rain um,
doing
through the image.
maybe can I go like that? Actually, I think I can zoom in
Yeah,
this way. Maybe not. But you can see it here,
yeah,
kind of in the middle part. And so,
yeah. So
did
because the constant light is closer to the couple, it doesn't have as much spread. And so it's kind of just like a spotlight halo around them from the constant light with that rain streaking through, and then the flash is a little further behind, and that's what's freezing the rain throughout the frame.
so both of your lights were behind the couple.
Yes.
And was there anything? Were you like close to a building or something? Was there something that was bouncing off, or did you just bring up the highlights of their faces in post?
Yeah, I just brought up the shadows of them in post, and they're just essentially being lit by ambient, and then there's a little bit of light that's reflecting off the rain in front of them and kind of filling in their face a little bit. I assume there's some bouncing off the concrete, and stuff like that. But most of it is just, pulling up the ambient on their faces. So this is the image that we just looked at, but this is the image directly out of camera, raw, unedited.
So Jason, I know I shoot Canon, and I feel like having shadows like that, it would be hard to capture all that data in the shadows. What are you shooting with? What camera?
Mhm. This was shot on the Sony A9,
Okay, I think
and this
Sony's
is at ISO
known,
100.
and they're known to have more of that detail in the shadows, aren't they?
Yeah, their dynamic range is really good, and then not only being really good, but it just holds up very well whenever you push it to its extreme, which I
Yeah,
do constantly. And then the Sony A9, because of the stack sensor that it uses, it's actually not the best dynamic range camera that Sony has, but it's obviously still pretty good.
that's awesome. So you have the constant light. What did you say? What was your modifier on your flash that captured the rain?
It was a CTO gel, and so the constant you can kind of see in the rain how it kind of has a little bit of a blue tint to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I did is I just color corrected for the CTO gel, made the CTO go to white, and then that made the constant light go a little bit blue.
That's crazy, man. So cool. So this was on the wedding, but it was the daughter of the bride and her husband that you took out in the rain.
Yeah, so what happened is this is just literally at their house. It's in the middle of the street.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a cool photo of the couple in the rain. And then a bunch of the guys were like smoking cigars out in the rain. And so we were just basically in the rain for like an hour just doing portraits. And once I did the photo of the bride and groom in the rain, they were like, "Oh, my daughter wants an image too." And so um, they went out into the same spot and just they did this dip. I didn't actually even tell them to do this. They were just like, "All right, one more," and so they did this dip, and it worked out perfect. So I like it.
That's awesome. I think I have one more here.
But
The
if you
same.
go,
Oh, there we go.
I think there's a behind this. Okay, yeah. So again, holding down the shutter and making it so that the flash doesn't fire. Now I get an image with just the constant light. And so now they're still frozen because they're just at that point in the dip where they're not moving very much. And I'm handheld here, and the in body image stabilization on my Sony A9 is good enough that I can shoot at like 1/4 of a second, 1/8 of a second.
Yeah.
And so when I do that, when I try and get these like streaks, I make sure to be kind of in that range where I can still handhold it and let the in body image stabilization do its work. And so the rain's streaking through, but they're still enough that they're still frozen.
Yeah.
And so yeah, this is
That's
this is what the constant light is doing without the flash.
that's insane, dude. I've been so interested in hearing and seeing how you're creating this stuff and just how you think. I haven't been watching the comments, but you got you got quite a few people that are like, "This is crazy." Natalie is asking, "What kind of rain gear do you recommend? Like, is there anything that you put over your camera or your flashes or anything like that?"
No, so for the constant lights, I'm using Stella Pro, the Reflex S, and then I have the CLX 10, and both of those are actually fully weather resistant. So you can actually just leave those in a full downpour of rain, and they'll be totally fine. So anytime I'm doing rain images, those are like one of the first lights that I reach for. And then my camera is a professional body, so it's weather sealed. Like it looks like it's completely pouring here, but it's not that much rain. It's just I'm getting a good compression of that rain, and then the long exposure with the streaks makes it look like it's raining a lot harder than it actually is. And then with my AD200, it's obviously not weather resistant, but they're cheap enough that if the rain kills it, I'll just whoa, I had a light just fall down. Um, my backlight just fell down. I had it balanced. But yeah, so with the 8200, I just kind of hope that it survives, and if it doesn't, it's done enough work that I'll just buy another one.
Yeah,
I've
Jason,
actually dropped I had an 8200 literally fall to the bottom of a fountain, and it still works.
really? Jeez. You know,
Yeah.
whatever just fell, I swear it sounded like a cat. Like,
Yeah, because it fell and like slid down I have this like painted backdrop as like my backdrop
oh,
here, and so
okay.
it like slid down the backdrop and like did this like
That's what it sounded like, a cat, like, and then glass breaking.
yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh, crazy, crazy. Well, hey, I think we have one more just kind of video, and I think this is showing
Yeah, so
essentially.
yeah, so this is actually the bride and the groom. They're just wearing like regular street clothes, but that's the image I got. And then there's a cigar photo that we got. So it's kind of those are kind of the three types of images that we got from the rain shoot.
Oh, so this is all in the same place, and this is where it was, right? Where these
Yep.
houses and everything were.
Yeah, just this is just the middle of the middle of the street in the neighborhood. Nothing special about it.
That's crazy, man. I love you mentioned kind of stacked. I never would have thought of that to put constant light plus a flash, and I love the result you got showing to be able to to have the two different types of style of light with the running rain as well as the actual raindrops that you captured. It's cool
Hmm.
stuff. Do you find it
Yeah, you.
yourself? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I have a cool image. Maybe I'll hop in the comments and I'll post it. But you can do some cool things by, even if it's not raining, but just manually moving your camera during the exposure, and
Mm,
so the streak of the couple, and then the flash will freeze them. So you can do some cool things with that as well.
that's awesome. So, Jason, you had mentioned posting in the comments. For those who might be watching this on YouTube, be sure to join the MagMod community on Facebook. That's where a lot of times we do these live, and then a lot of the conversation that's happening that I talk about here tends to happen there. So, if you're watching this on YouTube, join the MagMod community. Just search for it, MagMod community on Facebook, and come join us. I think there's like 98,000 photographers, which blows my mind, but and they're always sharing stuff. So that would be awesome. If you can find that image, that'd be fun to see for sure.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I have it.
Very cool. Well, Jason, this has been fun seeing all kinds of still images of you throughout this conversation.
I'm glad it hasn't frozen at like some super awkward like facial expression.
Oh, there's been a couple. I saw like a tiger
Oh,
claw.
yes.
No, it's funny. It keeps like right now it looks fine, and then it will probably freeze again on us here in a second. But
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is. And I'm like literally the only person on my internet right now, so I don't know
yeah, well, it
why
could.
it's
Yeah,
being
see
weird.
it froze again. It could be Ecamm, the software I use. But
Yeah.
before we run though, I just want to again just emphasize. Actually, let me just make sure there's no comment I need to. Yeah, it's Sandra, Natalie, Anika. You got a lot of amazing photographers out here watching already. But I appreciate all you guys tuning in. I want to just emphasize again, if you guys haven't yet, go follow Jason, Vincent Images _ Jason. Go check out his stuff. Check out his website here, and then of course, if you want to hear and learn more from him at a brewery, nonetheless,
Yeah,
in
at a
St.
brewery,
Peter's.
lots of hands-on learning. We're going to do a bunch of the techniques that we talked about here today. And one thing that I didn't really touch on during this is I have a whole entire process where I talk about like seeing the light.
Hmm.
And so the idea is finding cool and interesting light that's like in your natural surroundings, and then figuring out what's causing that light, how to recreate that light, and then how to modify that light to make something cool and interesting. And so we'll be doing a lot of that. Basically, the idea here is um, to go into a wedding day without a plan, but to have the tools to create cool images.
That's awesome. That sounds really cool, man. I would love to go. I would love to go to something like that. I just again, I look at your stuff and it's just
Come
so
on out.
creative. Yeah, I need to. I need to. And I was telling you when I saw this photo. Well, actually, let's just go back to the website. This literally could be me right here. I don't know how many pairs of pants I have stacked up in my closet from weddings where I've literally ripped the crotch just like that. My wife actually. I think I've said this before, but my wife used to call me sock crotch because I'd come home from weddings all the time with another pair of pants in my crotch. So, anyhow.
Is your back that flexible though?
I, no. He's doing the limbo, isn't he? Or is that
Yeah,
what
he's
that's
doing the
called? The
limbo.
limbo? I can't even think
Yeah.
of it. That's funny. No, heck no, dude. I would be on the ground for sure.
Yeah,
So,
I would break myself.
I think it's funny. I just imagine there's a behind the scenes shot somewhere of him doing the limbo and you right between his legs, like with your
Yeah, and this
24
is
getting right at the
yeah, this is 24 millimeters, so I'm close.
yeah, that's awesome, man. Very cool. Well, Jason, dude, it's been a lot of fun talking to you, man. I appreciate you
Yeah, it's
taking the
been
time.
great.
I know today's an important day in the history of the United States with voting and everything going on, and I just it feels nice to have this kind of break and be able to learn from you. So you're amazing, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure getting to hang out with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, again, if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to join us in the MagMod community. If you're watching us on the MagMod community, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, and you'll be able to see these as we put them up and put them out there. We have a lot of cool videos that we're working on as well. So thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks again, Jason. We appreciate you guys. Go follow him. Go check out his workshop. Go get some inspiration from him. He's an amazing dude. So
Thank you.
appreciate it. Have a good one, everyone. Take care.
Yep, see you guys.